It's 6:04. You're listening to Evening Extra with Mark Carruthers. An inquiry will be held into the contaminated blood scandal that left at least 2,400 people dead. Spokesman for Theresa May told the House of Commons it would establish the causes of the appalling injustice that took place in the 1970s and 1980s. Thousands of NHS patients were given infected blood products from abroad. In an emergency debate in the Commons this afternoon, the Labour MP Diana Johnson, who's campaigned for an inquiry, said the victims need answers.
They deserve to be told what went wrong, why it went wrong, and who is responsible for what happened. The story of the injustice they have suffered also needs to be set out and told to the wider public. Their voices need to be heard.
Diana Johnson, the Labour MP, speaking in the House of Commons this afternoon. Well, Brian Carberry from Downpatrick contracted hepatitis C after receiving blood transfusions for haemophilia. He's campaigned for an inquiry and he joins me now on the line. Brian, evening to you. Is this good news?
It definitely is. So it is, Mark.
You've been campaigning for this for quite some time. Did you ever think it would actually happen, Brian?
Up until a couple of years ago, I didn't think anything was going to come of it, and then my MP took it on under her belt, Margaret Ritchie, and she brought it up in the House of Commons, and the ball started rolling with Margaret, and things have really moved on this last couple of years. But we do need justice, and we do need answers.
You need answers to quite difficult questions. What do you hope the inquiry uncovers? What information that you don't currently have do you want to have in future?
Well, we all know that they knew about it from 1980, and they were still using blood up to 1986. Now, why were they using contaminated blood for 6 years?
So your contention is that the authorities knew that the blood that was being used was contaminated, but for a 6-year period they continued to use that blood anyway.
Absolutely,
okay.
And there's never been any accountability.
So you want to find out how that happened, why it happened, and who took the decision to allow it to happen, presumably?
Absolutely. Somebody has to be accountable. 2,400 deaths so far, and nobody's been held accountable for it. And
a lot of misery on top of that. 2,500 deaths, of course, it's a huge number, and it's tragic. But there are a lot of people who have, like yourself, who have been ill for a long period of time. I don't know how many people are in the same position that you are in. Can you put a figure on it?
The ballpark figure, there was about 7,500 people impacted originally. And out of that there's 2,400 deceased already. And there's an awful lot more. They're just hanging on.
So we're talking about 5,000 people who...
Still 5,000 people suffering.
Who are still suffering like yourself. So just, do you mind if we talk a little bit about your condition? I know we've spoken before and you've talked quite openly about it. So you received a blood transfusion for hepatitis C back it was in the 1980s, is that right?
No, I received blood transfusions for my haemophilia.
Yes.
Which is a factor, I get a factor 8 injected directly intravenously into the veins, and I need them there over certain periods of time and to help my blood clot.
Right. And sorry, from that you then contracted hepatitis C?
That's it. I contracted hepatitis C from one of these injections.
And do you know precisely when that happened, Brian?
It was the early 80s, 85-ish out there. I wasn't told till 91, but they knew around then and all that there that it was the blood was tainted. And
how did that and does that manifest itself in terms of your day-to-day life?
Well, it slowly, it's called the silent killer, and it slowly destroys the liver. It leaves you very fatigued. You've sore joints, sore muscles. You've a very low concentration span, and you're very forgetful.
So it's hard to function the way...
It's hard to function in normal life.
You might want to function with those difficulties. And is it progressively getting worse, Brian? Can you say that?
It definitely is. You know, your body can only take so much and recover for so many times, you know, and each time it just nibbles away a wee bit more of you.
Mm. So this inquiry hasn't come a day too soon as far as you're concerned?
No, it could have been done years ago. Any inquiry before where they all had their remittance that they weren't allowed to find this and they weren't allowed to do that, whereas this is going to be an open inquiry, so everything is going to be answered.
Do you have a view as to why all of a sudden, given that you and others have been campaigning for this inquiry for a very long time, why all of a sudden now the powers that be have decided that this is the right thing to do?
Well, due to pressures from local MPs and it being brought up in the House of Commons over this last couple of years, there appears to be records missing, there appears to be cover-ups, and all this here needs to be answered. And the more you campaign for it, the louder we've been getting with our MPs supporting us.
Does it help that a spokesperson for Theresa May has said the inquiry will establish the causes of what she called the appalling injustice that took place in the 70s and 80s? That kind of language helpful?
It helps if they mean it, but there's been Conservative governments, Labour governments have all said the same, and nothing's ever come of it until now when we're getting a public inquiry.
I suppose that the sad thing, and I don't want to end on a down note, but from your point of view, the inquiry has come. It's come later than you would have liked, but it's not going to give you your health back again.
It'll never give me my health back, but it may answer the questions.
And that would go in some small way, would it, to make things better?
Goes some way to make things better, and it makes people accountable for what happened.
Okay, well, look, we will keep a very close eye on the inquiry as it takes place, and no doubt, Brian, we will talk again. Thanks very much indeed for joining us on the programme tonight. It's been good to talk to you. Brian Carberry there from Downpatrick, bringing the time on the programme to 6:10.